Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Clinical Psychology Community UK. My name's Holly, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about clinical psychology and psychology undergraduate degrees. So this video is aimed towards anyone who is thinking about doing psychology for an A-level or potentially going to do your undergraduate degree in psychology and maybe thinking about going into clinical psychology. So and anyone who is studying on their degree as well. So what we're going to go through today is I'm going to give you a little bit of introduction to me and my background, and then we're going to think about what clinical psychology actually is, what does it mean, and then how to get the most out of your undergraduate degree particularly if you're going for a role in clinical psychology, which is uber competitive, and what to do after you graduate. Just a few tips from someone who's been there and done that and learned some lessons. So my background, I graduated with my undergraduate degree in psychology. It was a first class degree from the University of West of England in 2015. And then I went on to do a master's at Newcastle University in Foundations in Clinical and Health Psychology. So those are my academic qualifications. The undergraduate degree gave me, it was a BPS accredited degree, which is essential if you want to go and work in psychology, particularly clinical psychology. You have to have a BPS accredited degree. BPS stands for the British Psychological Society, for anyone who doesn't know. So that's a good place to start if you're thinking about a career in psychology. Have a look at the Division of Clinical Psychology on the BPS website. That's a really good place to start. So that's my academic experience. So thinking about my work experience, when I graduated from my master's, I applied to a lot of jobs. I'm talking over 150 jobs before I was offered a position, which was an NHS support worker role, which was a role that I absolutely loved. It was working in a weight management service. So it was helping people to lose weight, basically, working in a multidisciplinary team where psychology was part of that and helping people achieve their goals, really. I then went on to work as what we call a recovery worker for 8 months it was a charity sector. So it was public sector, but it was a charity that ran substance misuse services in my home county. And then I went on for a year and 5 months to be a senior recovery worker, which was more like a team leader sort of role. And then I'm in my current role, which is an assistant psychologist within the NHS. I work in Wales, so we have a slightly different system to in England. So in England they have what they call IAPT, which is improving access to psychological therapies. They have IAPT services. My service that I work in is called Primary Care Mental Health Support Service. So it's a similar sort of thing. We're the first port of call for someone that is struggling with some issues, really. So as you can see from this, I have a range of experience, but it all started with me doing a psychology degree. My school didn't offer psychology as an A-level, so I didn't have that option. What I did during my A2 year, so my second year of A-levels, I did like an Open University Introduction to Psychology course because our school was encouraging us to do courses to enhance our UCAS applications. So I did that, found that it was exactly what I wanted to do. Psychology, I was decided that was absolutely what I was going to go and do at university. So what I'm currently trying to do is gain a place on the ultra competitive clinical doctorate training program. So that is a training program at doctorate level. So the award that you get is a DClinPsy, and that awards a doctorate. So that is an NHS funded position. You train for 3 years, you're full time, so you're on lots of different placements, and typically you are on placement for 3 days a week and then studying for 1 to 2 days a week, something like that. But the doctorate to get on, as it is NHS funded, it's so competitive. It's about a 15% success rate, so that's 15% success rate. So it's very, very competitive, and that's not to say that you can't get on. It just, you need to be aware of how difficult it is and prepare yourself for that journey, I think. So on my first day of my undergraduate degree, on the introductory lectures, they were going through all the different types of psychology. So, health psychology, community psychology, clinical. And as soon as they got to clinical, they didn't have a speaker to do the clinical talk. They just said, don't bother, you won't get on. So that, to me, was almost like a red flag to a bull. I was like, well, I'm going to go for it then. I'm going to prove you wrong. And here we are, still trying to get the elusive positions. But the reason I wanted to do this webinar is to focus on providing some tips and some information for people that might want to pursue clinical psychology in the future, and to give you the best start possible if you're on your degree, or if you are deciding to do it for an A level, or deciding to where to apply and what to do for a degree, basically. So what is clinical psychology? Well, clinical psychology aims to promote well-being and reduce psychological distress overall. That's essentially what we mean. And they do this by taking leadership positions, supervising staff, working with clients in terms of assessment, formulation, and interventions. So that's broadly the work of clinical psychologists. They also do lots of research type things as well. And clinical psychologists deal with a variety of different issues. So it might be, so in my service, it's a primary care level service. So we're looking at the mild to moderate mental health issues, things like anxiety and depression, sometimes OCD, some trauma type stuff. But there's a variety of issues that clinical psychologists can work with. You can do specialism, so you can be a clinical neuropsychologist. So you first train in clinical psychology, and then you can go and learn about neurology and get qualification in that. So you do lots of stuff to do with the brain and things like that. It could be substance misuse, as I've said. It could be health conditions. It could be learning disabilities. You could be working with children. You could be working with adults. You could be working with older adults. Could be lots of different things, which is why I think clinical psychology is such a desired profession, because there is so much variety and scope that you can do. And the last thing is, to work as a qualified clinical psychologist in the UK, you need to complete the professional doctorate programme. And the award that you get there, as I said, is the DClinPsy. So those are the letters after your name. So when you do an undergraduate degree, usually it's a BSc or a BA. That will be the letters after your name once you finished your degree. And the DClinPsy will be added to that once you complete your doctorate programme. Clinical psychologists are trained, as I said, trained to doctorate level, which means that they also do research and things like that. So it's not just being a mental health worker or a practitioner or a clinician. It's also being able to be reflective and do the science and think about the evidence base and how we can make things better. A lot of leadership positions tend to be clinical psychologists in mental health services, simply because of the sheer amount of training and expertise that they have, basically. How do I become a clinical psychologist? Well, I'm still trying to answer that question. But the basics are, you need a BPS accredited undergraduate psychology degree. Now, in terms of grading, there are lots of differences, and there are lots of differences between the universities that offer the training programme. So what you'll find when you're doing your UCAS application, you'll see that so many universities, basically every university you can come across, offers psychology as an option because it's so popular. But when you are thinking about doing the clinical doctorate, there's only 33 unis in the UK that offer that, because it's a very specialised course. So there are lots of different ways that you can do it, and each course has different entry requirements, but broadly you need to achieve a 2-1. Usually it's a high 2-1 or a first. If you do get a degree lower than that, if you get a 2-2, then you need to complete a master's, usually, just to show that you are able to do that. The other way that you can do it, if you have an unrelated undergraduate degree, so it could be anything, you need to do a BPS accredited master's psychology conversion course, and you need to do well in that, usually high merit or distinction in that. As I said, there are lots of other unis though that do the doctorate, and there are a handful that only want people to have a 2-2 as long as they've got a master's, but some are very rigid and say no, they need to have a high 2-1 or a first. So keep that in mind. And I know that while university can be an amazing, super fun time, if you are interested in being a clinical psychologist, keep an eye on your grades and on your work, because you are going to have to make sure that you achieve that. Otherwise, you are going to struggle to move forward. The next thing you need is a good amount of clinically relevant experience. So that could be anything where you're working with people, really. Generally, experience is more valued if you're working under the supervision of a clinical psychologist. That's because you tend to get supervision from a clinical psychologist. You tend to think about things in a different way, and you tend to learn about clinical psychology that way. And you also need an amount of experience, so you have some experience behind you and you kind of understand how mental health issues impact people, the sort of interventions that you can offer. But you also need that experience to make sure that you do want to be a clinical psychologist. It's not an easy job. There is a lot of responsibility usually, and it can be quite an emotional job. So you need to make sure that this is actually something you want to do, which is another reason that they want a good amount. So some unis that do the course want you to have minimum a year experience. Some say minimum 6 months, some don't specify. So it really depends. You can have a look at all of the different courses. The next thing is ability to conduct postgraduate research. So while an undergraduate psychology degree you will be involved in research stuff, what they want to know is, can you do research at a doctoral level? That's what they want to know. So while you're at uni, try to seek out some research opportunities, see if you can help anyone. You could also go on to do a master's, which is exactly what I did, partly because I wasn't ready to leave academia. I wasn't ready to go and work, and I felt that I still needed to learn more. And partly because I wanted the postgraduate research experience, because I kind of ticked that box, if you like, in doing a master's. So it's really up to you. And I know there is now master's funding, I think, around, which wasn't when I was there, but yeah. Then you also need to complete, as I said, the DClinPsy professional doctorate course, and you need to register with the Health and Care Professions Council. So clinical psychologist is a protected title. Unless you have done all of these things and you've completed that professional doctorate, you've passed that, then you cannot call yourself a clinical psychologist. Right now, I can call myself a graduate psychologist. I can call myself that. That's not a protected title, but clinical psychologist is. And there's a whole other load of steps that you need to follow and meet, criteria that you need to meet to register with the HCPC as a clinical psychologist. So a little bit more background about the doctorate. All applications are done through one central clearinghouse. So it's the Leeds clearinghouse, and I'll put a link at the end and in the comments as well, so you can see that. Have a look here so you can see some of the eligibility requirements. You can see the different courses there are. Because while it might seem early, if you're just picking your degree subject or you're, on your degree, it might seem really premature to be doing this. But if you want to get into clinical and you want to look at those sorts of things, then I definitely would have a look first, so you know what to aim for and what sorts of things you need to do. So the basics of psychology undergraduate degrees then. Very popular subject, which results in very high entry requirements. You might think, so a university that is not ranked particularly well overall might actually have, 3 A's, or whatever the grading system is now, 3 A's for their entry requirements for psychology. And that is not necessarily because the course is very good. It's because it's an intensely popular course. That's why so many people apply for psychology. It's unreal. So bear that in mind when you're looking at universities. I would have a look on Facebook groups and see if there's any, like my university has a psychology at UE page, which is really helpful, and it's where lots of students can discuss things. But you get more honest reviews that way. So I would have a little look on Facebook, do some research, see who is on these courses, what they think of them, because choosing a course just because it has high entry requirements doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best place for you to go. Have a look at all of the prospectuses, which is just the best bit. I loved ordering all the prospectuses. It was my favourite bit. Then you need to decide whether to do a BSc or a BA. Psychology tends to be offered as a BSc, tends to be, but you can do a BA in psychology because it kind of straddles that art science gap. If you want to do clinical psychology, the BSc is the only one that's accredited by the BPS. So the BSc is the one that you need to do. But so that stands for Bachelor of Science, and BA stands for Bachelor of Arts. You also need to do a BPS accredited degree, as I have said. That gives you GBC. So what GBC is Graduate Basis for Chartership. So that means that your degree has prepared you enough that you can be registered as a graduate member of the BPS, and also that with further training, you can go on to register as a clinical psychologist once you've finished your doctorate. So make sure, if you want to do clinical or you want to have a career using your psychology degree as a psychologist, I would just do a BPS accredited degree. Most of them are, in my experience. I'm not sure if that's changed, but as I was, I applied to uni 9 years ago now, so so things might be a little bit different, but definitely go for a BPS accredited degree is my recommendation. So what sorts of things will you learn on a psychology undergraduate degree, and why is it so popular? Well, psychology is really interesting. It's the study of humans, basically, study of the mind, study of mental health, lots of that sort of stuff in there. And 1 in 4 of us is what they estimate will have experienced a mental health problem at some point in our life. For those people that kind of want to make sense of their experiences, or the experiences they've seen in their family or anything like that, then psychology is often a popular choice. But another reason is because it includes so many different aspects. So you will learn about research methods and statistics, which, you could go on to be a data analyst afterwards. You could be involved in research afterwards. So it gives you that opportunity. You think about the basics of clinical practice. You start thinking about professional issues in psychology. What are the challenges that affect psychologists and psychology as a profession? How is working in the NHS? What about reflective practice? You get to think about all of these sorts of things as well. And special interests. So in my 3rd year, they did so many different options, and one of them was human sexuality, and it was the best module that I've done. It was fantastic, because it just made you think in a completely different way about things. It fostered a lot of seriously interesting conversations. The lectures were great. It was just really great, and it helps you learn differently about all of the things that you've already learned. Then you get to think, okay, well, I'm in my 3rd year now, I can focus on different bits. So then that's when you kind of get to decide what your interests are. So those are the basics of a psychology undergraduate degree. Also, I should say they tend to last for 3 years. If you just go straight through 3 years full time, you can do them 6 years part time. Or a lot of degree courses now are offering placement years. So how do you get the most out of your psychology degree? Choose a placement year. That is my biggest bit of advice for you, because I didn't do that. Placement degrees weren't so much of a thing when I was applying. I'm sure they were, but it just wasn't something I was considering. I didn't think it would be important, because I was under the impression that because I had a degree, I would be able to walk into a job. Not the case, because I had no experience, really, no clinical experience, and no experience doing what I wanted to be doing, which was, working as an assistant psychologist, working with mental health clients, that sort of stuff. I didn't have any of that. If you do a placement year, you tend to work as an honorary assistant psychologist or a placement worker, mental health worker, lots of different roles, but choose a placement year. That will give you an entire year of experience, and you will come out and you'll be more employable. So when I started this job as an assistant, there's a group of other assistants who have been so massively supportive, but a lot of them did placement years and then went straight into an assistant job afterwards. whereas I didn't. It took me 4 years to get my first assistant job, and I enjoy getting all my other experience as well. But I think being an assistant is where I've learned lots of other things and being able to tie things together and make sense of everything. So choose a placement year. Please choose a placement year. I know it's difficult when you're choosing your degree and where to go for uni, and you want to be near your friends or your girlfriend or your boyfriend, but do what's best for you at the end of the day. Choose a placement year. The next thing is to get involved in research. So universities are research facilities. That is what they are there for. I know they're there to also teach you, supposedly on Zoom, but they are also there for research. That's what they do. They produce research. So there will be so much research going on where you are. Fortunately for me, at my university, the Centre for Appearance Research was there. So there were so many opportunities to get involved in research, and I actually started to lead a body image intervention for my peers, which then we evaluated, and we managed to publish on it as well. So that was really helpful for me, being published in applying for the doctorate as well. But get involved in research because you get to learn what different psychologists do, and you get a different understanding of research. So find out, speak to your lecturer, speak to your tutor, contact your psychology department, speak to them and ask them what research they're doing. Can you get involved? Do they need any help? Even if it's data collection, data entry, see if you can get some data analysis, whatever it is, get involved in that research. As well, seek out opportunities. So not just research opportunities, but clinical ones. It could be looking at volunteering with different organisations. It could be, what is this university missing? What could I do to help? Is there enough focus on social justice issues? Could I set something up that helps? Could I maybe join a psychology society or found one? So our university didn't have one. Me and a group of friends founded one. So then, and it's still going strong. 1,000 likes on Facebook. It's very, very exciting. But join the Psychology Society because they'll have lots of different events. You might even be able to get involved, be on the committee, because that helps you with leadership and it will help your confidence as well. And you'll start learning about psychology in a different way. And enjoy yourself. I know it's really difficult at the moment, particularly if you're in your first year, and if you are in your first year, I feel for you at the moment. This year's been tough on a lot of people, but I think it's been really, really tough on you guys. So try your best to enjoy yourself as much as you can. That's all I can really say at the moment. I would be saying, well, why don't you go out and enjoy yourself? But not that easy at the moment. And when I was planning this, I was thinking, if I could do my degree over again, what would I do? Well, I would choose a placement year, as definitely. I would get involved in seminars and discussions a lot more. So I used to sort of sit there and take the ideas down and then go home and think about them myself, which was a helpful way of doing things. But I have more confidence now, and if I could go back, I would get involved in those seminars and those discussions and those debates, because I think it would help me develop as a person quicker than the other way did. So that's definitely what I would do. I'd also try and get some NHS experience because that makes you much more employable. If you do a placement year anyway, then you will have that most likely, but try and get some NHS experience, even if you're on the bank, which is a way of working really flexibly and doing shifts as and when you're needed and as and when you would like to do them. I would probably get more involved in the BPS, the British Psychological Society, as well. So they have lots of different divisions and faculties. So they have a division of clinical psychology, division of health psychology, division of counselling psychology, all of these different ones: forensic, educational, occupational. But joining the division of clinical psychology, underneath that, they have lots of different groups and faculties. So they've got faculty for eating disorders, faculty for perinatal mental health, that sort of stuff. Then they've also got the pre-qualification group. So if you join the BPS and you join the division of clinical psychology, as a student member, you get a discounted rate, but it is still a controversial thing because students are not the most well off of people, and typically people of privilege are the ones that get to join those societies. So I do understand that. But the BPS have got loads of different things on their YouTube channel that you can have a look at as well. But they have a pre-qualification group. So if you join those things, then you will automatically be part of the pre-qual group. They do loads of events helping you get the most out of being a pre-qualified psychologist, which is essentially what you'll be. So highly recommend joining that. And I wish I had done more of that during my degree, I think. But the biggest thing is to do a placement year. I cannot impress upon you enough to do a placement year. So what do you do after you graduate? Well, if you want to do clinical psychology, you could do further study. You could look at a master's in science, a master's of research, a master's of arts. You could look at PhDs. So that would be doing 3 years of research. Then you could go on to do your doctorate, your DClinPsy. And there are lots of different options for you if that's something you want to do. Lots of people just want to go into work, which is absolutely fair. And I would probably recommend this as well. So you can apply for jobs. You can start looking for support worker roles, for assistant psychologist roles, healthcare assistants. You can apply for all of these different things and have a look at NHS jobs, particularly because those are the places where NHS jobs are advertised. And as the doctorate, the professional doctorate is NHS funded, they're quite keen to have candidates that are committed to the NHS. So try and get as much NHS experience as possible. If you are unsuccessful, seek feedback on those applications. This is what I did when I finished my master's. I applied to 150 odd jobs. And I sent an email after every single rejection saying, hi, do you mind giving me any feedback? Often there wasn't any, because mostly you don't get feedback unless you interview. But I did get some really good feedback from a lovely employer who told me how I should structure my application and what sorts of things to say. So that was seriously helpful. Another thing you can do is join social media groups. So there's loads. There's so many out there that you can join. You can join ours. We're on Instagram and we're on YouTube. And we do have a Facebook group as well that you can join. So you can join these things to network, basically. LinkedIn as well is another one that you can network with people and maybe learn about job opportunities and professional development and things like that. Assistant Psychologist UK and Assistant Psychologist Wales, they're also really good groups for networking with other assistants or prospective assistant psychologists, people that really want to be assistants. Good places to get tips, good places to get support on your applications and things like that. There's also the UK Clinical Psychology Doctorate applicants. There's also an application help group page. There's loads. There's so much out there. It's crazy. So yeah, have a little look, see what's out there. But the biggest thing, I think, what to do after you graduate is to think about what you want to do with your life. Think about what it is that you want to do for your career. And then, there are well-trodden paths before you that you can follow. A lot of the time, applying to clinical psychology, the doctorate program, people tend to be support worker, assistant psychologist, trainee, qualified consultant. That tends to be the well-trodden path. There are lots of different ways that you can do it. But find out what it is that you want to do, why you want to do it as well, will be really, really helpful. Because if you really want to train in therapy and help people and be a therapist, then do that. Absolutely do that. That's a really valuable career. But perhaps if that is the only thing you want to do, then clinical psychology might not be the best place. You don't need all of that hassle and aggro. What you do need is a lot of experience going to be a therapist. If you want to be a clinical psychologist, you need to want to dedicate your life to lots of the different things that they do, including research, including leadership, including all of that. So really my top tip there is to think about what you want to do with your life. Oh, and of course, the British Psychological Society. Have a look at their website, have a look at their membership, see what you think. There's also the Association of Clinical Psychologists as well that you can have a little look at, so ACP online. I do want to take a moment to think about self-care. Managing rejection is going to become important. It's not always the way for people. Sometimes people can go to uni, get a job straight away, and find it easier. I have not met a single person that's done this, so if you have, well done. But managing rejection is going to become important. So what I mean by that is look after yourself. Sometimes we internalize the lack of success to mean that we are failures. And then we can be very hard on ourselves, really critical of ourselves. And that's just not helpful to anyone, actually. It's the biggest lesson I've learned, is that that's not helpful to anyone. So what you need to do is reach out if you need support. You know, your university will have student wellbeing programs, you've got tutors, you've got friends, you've got family, you've got external sources, you know, you've got mental health services. Just because you're studying psychology and you want to be a mental health professional doesn't mean that you can't have lived experience of mental health issues. Just remember that. So reach out if you need support. It's really important to do that. This is what we would say to clients, so it's really important that we say it to ourselves. And the other thing is, do things that you enjoy. Again, I know that 2020 has made that really difficult for a lot of people, but doing things that you enjoy will protect your well-being. It will make you enjoy life, which is really important. When I started this whole situation back in when I started my degree, and they said don't do clinical psychology because you won't get on, I went, right, well, I know that I'm going to have to work 100% of the time. I'm never going to be able to switch off. I'm just going to focus on it 100%. It was not useful. It's really not useful. Led to burnout. Earlier on this year when I left my last job, it was very difficult, and I experienced massive burnout, and it took months to get back to a place where I felt confident and like myself again. So make sure that you don't do that. This is honestly my advice to you. Make sure that you have other interests. Make sure that you enjoy your life. Don't, you know, clinical psychology, while it might be a vocation to some, it is a job at the end of the day. So go and enjoy your life. And if you get the job, then great. If you don't, then you can keep working. Just make sure that you balance that really well as much as you can. Those are my biggest tips on self-care. So I hope I've answered as many of your questions as possible, to do with applying for psychology, applying for degrees, applying for jobs. If there's anything else you want to ask, leave me a comment down below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So that's how you can get involved. So you can click subscribe, you can follow us on the social medias. Ask us questions. What topics do you want to see? Let me know where you're at in your psychology journey. What would be useful to you to learn about clinical psychology, and what would be helpful for you? So give us a comment on any of the videos. And here are some of the helpful resources that I spoke about. So we've got Leeds Clearinghouse, that's for all of the doctorate applications, the BPS, and the BPS Careers website as well is where you can have a little look. And then the UCAS website I've popped on there, so you can look at all the different psychology courses that there are. Psychology can be a really, really rewarding place to learn about yourself, to learn about the world, to learn about people around you, to help you make sense of things. But beware, because it can be really difficult if you're planning to go for the elusive doctorate. Trust me, it can be really difficult. And that's not to deter you, but it is also to just make you aware of these things. It's uber competitive, and we want to try and lead to a world that's less competitive and more community based, more supportive. So if you've got any ideas on how we can do that, how we can open a bit of conversation, do some networking, then please do let me know below. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining us today. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and let me know what other videos you want to see, and I'll hopefully try and do that. Thanks. Bye.